Good morning, grade 10 students. Welcome to another day of new great learnings. I am Ma'am Leia Bonagua from Malinta National High School. In your previous lessons, you have learned protein synthesis is the process in which cells make proteins. The synthesis of proteins occurs in two sequential steps, transcription and translation. And for today's lesson is another interesting topic in biology entitled Evidence of Evolution. Do you know why dinosaurs no longer exist today? Why some animals before are very different from the animals we have now? From grade 7 to grade 9, you have learned that organisms are grouped into kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. You also learn that organisms possess unique characteristics. Some organisms may look the same, but have distinct differences from each other. Others may not be related to one another, but they have similar functional features and characteristics. And for our objectives, we are going to explain how fossil records, comparative anatomy, and genetic information provide evidence for evolution. What is evolution? How do we know living things have changed over time? What evidence do we have? Evolution is a change in the genetic makeup of a population over time. Evolution is the process of change in all forms of life over generations. And evolutionary biology is the study of how evolution occurs. We will be discussing the four evidence of evolution. And these are fossils, comparative anatomy, embryonic development, and genetic information. How do fossils form? Have you ever seen fossils of any organism? Fossils are examples of evidence that paleontologists use in studying evolution. A paleontologist is a person who studies fossils. Fossils are traces of organisms that lived in the past and were preserved by natural processes or catastrophic events. They can be remains of organisms which include bones, shells, teeth, and also feces embedded in rocks, teeth, resin, and ice. Fossils are window into the past. They provide clear evidence that evolution has occurred. What is a fossil? The preserved remains or traces of an organism that is no longer living. So most fossils are found in sedimentary rocks, where gentle pressure and lower temperature allow preservation of past life forms. Fossils become a part of sedimentary rocks when sediments such as mud, sand, shells, and pebbles cover plant and animal organisms and preserve their characteristics through time. Are fossils most commonly found in sedimentary rock? Among the three major types of rock, fossils are most commonly found in sedimentary rock. Unlike most igneous and metamorphic rocks, sedimentary rocks form at temperatures and pressures do not destroy fossil remnants. Let me give you an example of a fossil. We have a mold fossil. A mold fossil is an impression of a living organism. They are made when an organism dissolves in the earth and leaves a hollow mold behind. The mold is then filled in by minerals, leaving something like a statue of the organism behind. The second one is the cast fossil. Cast fossils are like mold fossils in that they form, at least in part, with an imprint made in a rock or sediment. However, cast fossils go one step further. Once the hollow mold is present, they are subsequently filled in with minerals, that later harden to form solid rock. Thus, fossils also include skin, leaves, teeth, glass, and embryos. The third one is the trace fossils. These are the rocks that have preserved evidence of biological activity. They are not fossilized remains, just the traces of organism. The imprint of an ancient lip or footprint is a trace fossil. Burrows can also create impressions in soft rocks or mud, leaving a trace fossil. And we have what we call a true form fossils. This is a fossil of the whole entire body of the organism, like an actual animal or animal part. How they are formed? True form fossils are formed when the animal's soft tissues or hard parts did not decay over the years. To understand how living things have changed through time, scientists need to be able to determine the age of the fossil. Scientists can determine fossil age in two ways. We have relative dating and radioactive dating. What is a relative dating? Relative dating is the process of determining if one rock or geologic event is older or younger than another without knowing their specific ages. Example, how many years ago the object was formed. Scientists try to find out the order in which events happened during Earth's history. They use rocks and fossils for relative dating, determining whether an object or event is older or younger than other events. Scientists use different pieces of information about rocks to determine the relative age of each rock layer. Geologists have established a set of principles that can be applied to sedimentary and volcanic rocks that are exposed at the Earth's surface to determine the relative ages of geological events preserved in the rock record. For example, in the rocks exposed in the walls of the Grand Canyon, there are many horizontal layers, which are called strata. The study of strata is called stratigraphy, and using a few basic principles, it is possible to work out the relative ages of rocks. Going back to radioactive dating, radioactive isotopes, or what we call radioisotopes, can be used to estimate the ages of not only of rocks, but of course, the fossils and artifacts made long ago by human beings. Even the age of Earth has been estimated on the basis of radioisotopes. The general method is what we call radioactive dating. Radioactive elements occur naturally in igneous rocks. Scientists use the date of decay to calculate the rock's age. Determining absolute ages, scientists first determine the amount of radioactive element in a rock. Then, they compare the amount with the amount of stable element into which the radioactive element decays. Radioactive isotopes or radioisotopes can be used to estimate the ages of not only of rocks, but of course fossils and artifacts made long ago by human beings. Even the age of the Earth has been estimated on the basis of radioisotopes. The general method is what we call radioactive dating. Radioisotopes and radioactive decay. A radioisotope has atoms with unstable nuclei. Unstable nuclei naturally decay or break down. They lose energy and particles and become more stable. As nuclei decay, they gain or lose protons. So the atoms become different elements. This is illustrated in the screen that you can see now. The original unstable nucleus is called the parent nucleus. After it loses a particle, in this case, a type of particle called an alpha particle, it forms a daughter nucleus with a different number of protons. Question: how can the half-life of a radioisotope be used to date a rock? After a rock forms, nuclei of radioisotope inside the rock start to decay. As they decay, the amount of the original or parent isotope decreases, while the amount of its stable decay product or daughter isotope increases. By measuring the relative amounts of parent and daughter isotopes and knowing the rate of decay, scientists can determine how long the parent isotope has been decaying. This provides an estimate of the rock's age. This is the geologic time scale. It is the calendar for events in Earth history. It subdivides all time into named units of abstract time code in descending order of durations: eons, eras, periods, epochs, and ages. The geologic timescale is divided into several magnitude of units of time. We have eons. These are the largest division of time, lasting thousands, millions of years. And the examples are Phanerozoic and the Precambrian eons of the Proterozoic, Archean, and Hadean. We also have eras. Eras are the subdivisions of eons. They are more on the scale of hundreds of millions of years. The eras are Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic. We also have Neo, Meso, and Paleo-Proterozoic, and Neo-Meso, Paleo, and Co-Archean. The next one is what we call the period. These are referred to as the systems and the subdivisions of eras and typically lastens of millions of years. The next one is the epochs, are referred to as the series, are the subdivisions of the periods. Epochs tend to be several million years in length. And of course, the last one are the ages, also referred to as the stages, are the smallest units of geologic time and are usually only a few million years in length. The present age is what we call Mehaglaya. We will now proceed to the second evidence of evolution. This is what we call a comparative anatomy. A comparative anatomy is the study of the similarities and differences in the structures of different species. Similar body parts may be homologous or analogous. Both provide evidence for evolution. Homologous structures are structures that are similar in related organisms because they were inherited from a common ancestor. These structures may or may not have the same function in the descendants. In the diagram, it shows the hands of several different mammals. They all have the same basic pattern of bones. They inherited this pattern from a common ancestor. However, their forelimbs now have different function. The most important thing to remember about homologous structure is that they share common ancestry. In other words, only organisms that are somehow related to each other can have homologous structures. And this one is what we call analogous structures. The wings of a bird and of an insect are analogous organs. Both of these species have wings that they use for flight, and yet their wings came from dissimilar ancestral origins. Analogous structures are similar structures in unrelated organisms. These structures are similar because they do the same job, not because they share a common ancestry. For example, dolphins and sharks both have fins, even though they are not related. Both species develop fins because of how and where they live. The third evidence of evolution is the embryonic development. Comparative embryology. Comparative embryology is the comparison of different animals in various stages of embryonic development. Comparative biology has proven, as you can see in the image, that many animal species, including the humans, look very similar in our early and middle stages of embryonic development. All vertebrate embryos exhibit what we call pharyngeal pouches at a certain stage of their development. These features, which develop into neck, face parts, suggest relatedness. And the fourth evidence of evolution, organisms with similar DNA share common ancestors and are closely related. Similar anatomy found in different species may be homologous, shared due to ancestry, or analogous, shared due to similar selective pressures. Molecular similarities provide evidence for the shared ancestry of life. DNA sequence comparisons can show how different species are related. Darwin could compare only the anatomy and embryos of living things. Today, scientists can compare their DNA. Similar DNA sequences are the strongest evidence for evolution from a common ancestor. Look at the diagram. This is what we call a cladogram, a branching diagram showing relatedness or related organism. Each branch represents the emergence of new traits that separate one group or organism from the rest. The cladogram in the figure shows how humans and apes are related based on their DNA sequences. Now, let us have a short review of the lessons that we discussed today. Kindly get a paper and a pen and write your answers. Ready? Let's begin. Question number 1, which refers to a chart that divides Earth's history into different time units. Is it letter A, fossil record? Letter B, geologic timescale? Letter C, relative age dating? Or letter D, trace fossil? Question number 2. Which term describes the collection of all the fossils ever discovered on Earth? Is it letter A, cast? B, mold? C, fossil record? Or D, trace fossil? Question number 3. Which is a fossil copy of an organism in a rock? Is it letter A, cast? B, mold? C, fossil record? Or D, trace fossil? Question number 4. What term refers to a body parts of organisms that are similar in structure and position but different in function? Is it letter A, camouflage? B, mimicry? C, analogous structures? Or D, homologous structures? And for the last question, number 5. What term refers to body parts that perform a similar function but differ in structure? Is it letter A, analogous structures? B, homologous structures? C, pharyngeal pouches? Or letter D, vestigial pelvis? Are you ready? Let us now check your answers. For question number 1, which refers to a chart that divides Earth's history into different time units, the answer is geologic time scale. For question number 2, which is the preserved evidence of the activity of an organism? If your answer is trace fossil, then you are correct. Question number 3, which is a fossil copy of an organism in a rock? The answer is letter A, cast. For question number 4, what term refers to body parts of organisms that are similar in structure and position but different in function? If your answer is homologous structures, letter D, you are correct. And for the last question, what term refers to body parts that perform a similar function but differ in function? The structure? The answer is analogous structures. Very good, students. Thank you for participating in our review lesson. And now let's proceed to our question and answer portion. Our comment section is now open for your questions, and our teacher moderator will choose 2 questions. You have 30 seconds to type your questions, and the timer starts now. Here is our question number 1 from Dalandanan National High School. How can you tell if something is a fossil? Well, paleontologists recognize fossils based on their shape, their structure, and sometimes the material they are made of. Since fossils are the remains of ancient life, paleontologists study the shape, structure, and materials of living things today. This helps them recognize fossils that are the remains of living things, from tens of thousands to millions of years old. Question number 2 from Malinta National High School. What are homologous characteristics? When we say characteristics, we can also describe its traits. And homologous traits are traits that are similar to one another due to shared ancestry. As species adapt to their environments and evolve over time, these traits may change in appearance and in function, but ultimately they share the structure, genetics, or what we call embryonic structure of their common ancestor. Other questions will be answered by your teacher during your online class. And that ends our lesson for today. I hope that you learned. Thank you for listening and watching. Have a good day and stay safe, everyone.